Good evening. Boy, we've got a packed house. This is great. Well, good evening, and welcome to this evening's quarterly speaker series event. My name is Greg Brainerd, and on behalf of the Rotary Club of Daniel Island, the Daniel Island Business Association, the Daniel Island Community Fund, and the Daniel Island Club, we're really pleased to host the mayor of one of the greatest cities in the entire world. Charleston's very own Mayor William Cogswell. Thank you for being here. So as we often do, before we start with this evening's presentation, just going to give you a little precursor, if you will, of what we have lined up for you for next quarter. So this will be on November 13th. We actually have the mayor of the city of North Charleston, Reggie Burgess, coming to speak with us. And I know you may say, isn't it a bit odd to have two mayors back to back? But the reality is that the challenges faced by both men are really quite different. And you'll hear that come through tonight. So let me just spend a few more moments. And by the way, this just got confirmed about 2 hours ago. So I'm literally trying to read some cryptic notes as I just got confirmation that Reggie Burgess will be with us. So let me just share a few notes. Next quarter, we'll hear how he was elected mayor in November of last year. So he's obviously still in his first year of his term, but he's not new to North City of North Charleston. In fact, he was born in the city, went off to play football for Morgan State University, where he was a highly regarded wide receiver. While he had his eye on the NFL, he chose to come back to North Charleston, and he joined its police force in 1989. He did everything one might expect of a police officer to do as he rose in the ranks. Then in 2018, he was named chief of police, where he had the honor of serving and protecting the city of this, serving and protecting the people of the city that he loves. He retired in 2023 after 34 years on the police force, but his journey was not over. Since being elected as North Charleston's new mayor, he is already addressing some of the daunting challenges. The old Navy base is being renovated, which will greatly expand the city's economic footprint. The Coast Guard is building a new facility on the south end of the Navy base, which will be home to 5 Coast Guard cutters, and it'll become the East Coast Center of Operations for the U.S. Coast Guard. The port has purchased, there you go. The port has purchased the old paper mill and is converting it into a new port facility. That means that the Don Holt Bridge will have to be rebuilt. And interstate, you won't like this one bit. Interstate 526 is going to have to be widened. So that's quite a list of upcoming challenges. Obviously, the mayor will clearly have his hands full. As we start tonight, I've got a bit of trivia for you, just a trivia question. And here it is. There's someone in this room who escorted Nikki Haley to her high school junior prom. Anyone want to guess who that might be? All right, I've got another hint. He was 1 year ahead, so by come senior prom, he had already graduated. And she chose not to go to the senior prom. And rumor has it that once when you've had the best, you don't want to settle for less. So anyone want to guess who that person might be? Indeed, you're right. It's our very own district representative, Mark Smith. So Mark will be introducing Mayor Cogswell this evening, but let me just take a brief moment and introduce Mark Smith. Since 2020, he has been serving as a member of the South Carolina House of Representatives, representing Berkeley County, while promoting our interests on several key committees. Before serving as representative at the State House, Mark served as town councilman in Mount Pleasant and on several very key committees there as well. Mark is a fellow member of our Rotary Club of Daniel Island and even served previously as the president of the Rotary Club of Charleston downtown. Rotary has a motto, service above self. Mark's consummate service further extends to serving on several boards of prominent nonprofit organizations within our community. On top of all this, Mark is the CEO and owner of McAllister Smith Funeral Homes locally, as well as other funeral homes around the state. Mark and his wife, Elaine, live on Daniel Island, and they are the proud parents of 3 grown sons. Mark?
Thank you, Greg. And I certainly hope when y'all are all at my visitation, I'm known for something other than having taken Nikki Haley to the prom. But God bless you, Nikki. We love you. And another fact that's kind of fun and interesting, her husband, Michael, was my hallmate roommate at Anderson College. So my roommate, John Edgman, actually introduced Nikki and Michael way back in the day. So it really is a true lifelong friendship that I enjoy with Nikki, her family, and Michael as well. But tonight is all about someone else. It's about our mayor, William Cogswell. I can't begin to tell y'all how excited and honored I am as a member of the Daniel Island Rotary Club to have the opportunity to introduce my friend, former House colleague, William Cogswell, to each of you. And the real secret that we need to know here on Daniel Island, because here's the political capital that we each get to pull out when we need it. Guess what precinct delivered the votes to get him across the finish line? Daniel Island, baby. Daniel Island. So for that, let's give it up for our mayor, William Cogswell. There's your love, Mayor, from Daniel Island. We do love you. But I do want to go through and do an introduction, a formal introduction, if I may. I want to cover 3 areas. I want to talk about a true local family man, our mayor, William Cogswell. Hard work and big ideas have been ingrained in this man from an early age. His first job as a young teenager was working in a tomato picking shed on Wadmalaw. Now, for you Cumyas, the Benyas know that. Wadmalaw is a couple islands south of us, okay, y'all? But by his early age in his 20s, he had started his own successful company renovating historic properties. Today, proven himself as a leader on responsible adaptive reuse projects like the cigar factory, the Garco mill, and the Navy Yard. Mayor Cogswell has built a reputation for structuring collaborative and innovative projects, the type of projects we need to implement to move our city forward from where we are now to where we want to get to. It's his love for this city that keeps him motivated to fight for a better Charleston. Today, William and his wife of 20 plus years, Lucille, live along with their 2 children, just literally, y'all, 2 blocks from where he grew up. Don't be mistaken. He's traveled a little bit. He's a traveled man. So let's go over some of that. Mayor Cogswell is the son of Edmund and Sally Rhett of James Island, and the late Scott Cogswell, who died when he was young in a car accident. So William and his family understand what loss is about and learning from those lessons and moving forward. His sister Sarah, Hamlin Hastings, and Katie live with their families on James Island in West Ashley. William is a graduate of Sewanee and holds a master's degree from Columbia University, where he received his honors for his thesis, listen to this, y'all, on sustainable construction. He gets it. Next, I want to talk about a proven track record on executing big ideas. We know that as getting the job done. What separated William from the other candidates on the campaign trail is that he thinks outside of the box, embraces creativity, and won't take no for an answer. You'll never hear him say, it is what it is. Despite the fact that these projects were too difficult to take on, William always found a way to get the job done. Early in his career, William partnered with city leaders to develop the first workforce housing project in Charleston. Y'all listen to this. in 2006. More recently, he's been responsible for transforming a once neglected building like the cigar factory downtown. For the come years, you don't know what an eyesore and troublesome place that destination really was at one point. But for the been years, you know that. Additionally, he's been a catalyst for revitalization, the Navy Yard here in North Charleston. There was a time, y'all, when we thought the closing of that Navy base was going to be the ruination and the end of Charleston as we know it. In 2022, William helped deliver a new social service center as part of the partnership between Charleston County and the Navy Yard partners. 175,000 square feet Teddy Pryor social service building, which was delivered both on time and under budget, baby. We like that. Back on the campaign trail, when he was on the campaign trail, William was the only candidate who successfully structured complex public-private partnerships and conduct the rigorous financial analysis required, skills that are desperately needed by a mayor, a CEO of a town like ours. Lastly, let's talk about his political experience. William first entered politics to fight for the greater pragmatism in government and apply his professional skill to tackling the issues of his community. In 2016, William was elected to the South Carolina House of Representatives, where he made a substantial headway in infrastructure and conservative legislation over his 6-year tenure. And I can personally vouch for that. William, I remember the day when you were on the campaign trail and we met at one of my funeral homes in Mount Pleasant, snapped that picture, and I said, my name is Mark Smith. I approve this message and elect this guy to the State House. And we did, and nothing but good stuff has happened since then with the support and, most importantly, the votes of many of you and those before you. Working across the aisle, this guy has a bipartisan focus and a heart. He understands the community that he represents, not just one side of the aisle. William was appointed chairman of the Business and Commerce Subcommittee in his 3rd term. Y'all, that's unheard of, that type of quick acceleration and committee appointments early on in the State House. But the Speaker recognized those talents and they elected him to do that and appointed him to do that. So again, let's give a very warm Daniel Allen welcome to our mayor that we helped get across the finish line, our mayor, William Cogswell. We love you, brother. Welcome. This is your community.
No yahoos. That's right. That's right. We're going to start selling those hats, right? Well, I mean, I got like goosebumps, Mark. I mean, good God, I'm going to get you to come to every one of my speaking events and introduce me. This is wonderful. Plus coming to a place, I know I'm in, a friendly environment and a place that I'm going to be very comfortable. And that means I'm just going to wing it on the talking points when you let me have a drink while I give my talk. So thank you all for having me all out here. And yes, in all seriousness, I am well aware that the Cainhoy Peninsula is the reason why it says mayor in front of my name there. So thank you all for all that you have done to get me here. And, you might have to, convince my wife that it was a wise move, but in all seriousness, really glad that we're here, excited about the possibilities and what we have going on in this city. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to give you kind of just a lay of the land, some of the things that we're working on. And then I'm going to open it up to questions. And I want to be very transparent and open with you. I love questions. I think questions, to be honest with you, help me, hear what's going on in the community. And it's important to get people's perspective that are living it day to day, because that's how we make good decisions in government. And I mean that very sincerely. And, maybe a few softballs, but I'm not afraid of fastballs either. So the way I break it up, and this was something that some of you all heard on the campaign trail, is we ran on 3 basic principles: smart, grow, sound, governance, and safe community. Smart, safe, sound. I mean, it's kind of catchy. It kind of kept my simple lizard brain to just be focused on the tasks at hand. So we're going to go through each one of those, and I'll give you 3 examples of things that we've got going on, and then talk a little bit about things that are happening specific to Daniel Island as well. If I can fit, and I'm also very technically not very inclined, so appreciate all the work over here getting this set up. So did want to just talk a little bit about Daniel Island. I don't have to tell you all that we are growing leaps and bounds, right? The Tri-County area, but particularly Charleston, is exploding in growth. I mean, the story I tell is I went to the U.S. Conference of Mayors like 2 weeks into my having been elected, or actually being sworn in. And, you know, U.S. Conference of Mayors, you go there, you're sitting there with a bunch of mayors, and it's kind of like, I quickly realized it was like a therapy session. I mean, you're like sitting there talking to these other guys, and it was crazy. You go to these breakout sessions, and they're talking about what's going on in their respective cities. And they're like, you know, the doom loop and the tax base moving out, and the homeless population exploding, and crime, and you know, the CBD just losing its population. And the more I kept hearing about it, I was like, I want to get the hell away from Akron, Ohio, and all that bad mojo that's going on there. But it really made me aware of just how fortunate we are, because, I mean, as you see here in these numbers, especially post-COVID, we have exploded. I mean, we are the envy of a lot of the rest of the country, and we have an incredible macro economy that isn't really grounded or dependent in one industry. For an MSA of less than 1 million people that we're quickly approaching it, I mean, Charleston, the region, has a ton going on. And so it's really exciting, but of course, it comes with some pretty major challenges and growing pains, ones that are very serious. And if we're going to maintain what we all know and love about this place, we need to make sure we pay close attention to. Again, Daniel Island and the Kanawha Peninsula, in terms of the city of Charleston, it's about 10 or 11%, but that is growing pretty rapidly. And if you want to know where the growth areas are, it's Daniel Island and Johns Island. Those are the 2 areas where the city is growing aggressively, and 2 areas that, frankly, we need to be very proactive about making sure we have the infrastructure in place to support that growth, so that, again, the livability and what we know and love about this place isn't compromised. So I'm going to talk about smart growth and a few specific projects you probably have read about. These are not related on Daniel Island, but I can speak to a few different initiatives that we have going there. These are major initiatives, though, for the city of Charleston. This is the Sumar Street deal. This is a piece of property that's about 35 acres in West Ashley. The city bought it, or bought the very tip of it, the very top up there where you see the vacant land. There used to be a grocery store up there, an old Piggly Wiggly. And the city bought it to keep it from becoming a gas station, which I think was the right move back in, I think it was 2016. The problem is they didn't do anything with it for between now and then, and it's been sitting idle. It's been really an eyesore in one of the major gateways into the city. And so when I looked at it during the campaign, I said, well, look, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say, well, it'd be fine to redevelop the little 2-acre parcel at the top, but wouldn't it be great to redevelop the entire 35 acres into something that would be really meaningful and do it in a very fiscally responsible way? And so that's what we're working on right now. We are, I went and approached the owners of the larger center, and they decided that they would do a public-private partnership with us where we would contribute future tax revenue. So not revenues that we have coming in, but if they were to invest $300 million, that would generate about $50 million in tax revenue that we could bond off of. And so we can take some of that money and reinvest it back into affordable housing, street improvements, road improvements, stormwater improvements, and the like. So it's a great win-win for them because they get some help getting this placemaking development off the ground, and we get a lot of what we need in terms of more affordable housing, particularly stormwater initiatives and a really cool gathering place for the residents of West Ashley in an area that has been long neglected. So again, to me, it's just an example of, and there was a lot of lawyers and a lot of accountants that went in on this, but we saw an idea, we had a vision, and we executed on it, and we didn't take no for an answer. And as Mark pointed out, I really can't stand the term, it is what it is. I'm more, if there's a will, there's a way, and there's usually a will and a way to do things that are smart and governed. Sumar's one, Union Pier is another one that you've heard a lot about. This is something that has been an eyesore in the city for, 90 years. It's an old port break bulk terminal. It's 65 acres on the harbor. The reason why this would be relevant to folks off of the peninsula is this would provide, again, 65 acres of public waterfront that you could come and tie your boat up to. And what we're looking at doing here is building a major park system along the water, about 20 acres of park space on the water there. And this wouldn't be possible without, this won't be possible without what's called a TIF district, a special tax district, the same thing that was on the Sumar Street site. And I won't bore you with all the details, but basically it sets up a special tax area that the taxes through the private investment that are generated in that area will be reinvested back into that area for public good, only for public improvements like parks, like streets, like sidewalks. Though the state legislature last year did allow us to add affordable housing to that because that is such a critical need. So watch this, folks. This is going to be, I think, one of the most significant potential redevelopments on the East Coast in the next 3 to 5 years. It is currently under contract from the Ports Authority, who currently owns it, to Ben Navarro, who is the guy that really brought us what you experience, for better or for worse. I know some of you might not like the late night concerts at Credit One, but has an incredible track record of giving back to the community in very meaningful ways. So when the port was looking at selling this, I went to them and said, look, this was a very controversial issue. One of the things that I think you need to do is you need to sell it to somebody local. And it's not because I'm xenophobic or, I'm one of those people that don't like outsiders coming into Charleston. That is not the case at all. But what I do know is that when you're local and you do a project that's as controversial as something like this, you damn well better do it right, because you're going to go to every cocktail party for the rest of your life and you're going to get yelled at if you don't. So there's some real responsibility there that I think means something. And so they did a process internally, and Ben came out, and we've been working very closely with him. But in order to get this deal off the ground, the school district is going to have to approve this special taxing district, as will the county, Charleston County in this case. And we're hoping that happens in the next 2 weeks. And if it does, I think this thing will be off to the races. And again, very impactful for not just the city, but really our region. So really exciting stuff. All right, the next one, geez, I'm gonna figure this out. Hang on. All right, one more, one back. There we go. Now, this isn't a very pretty picture, but one of the issues I did mention when I was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors is the rising number of homelessness. And it is not a major issue in the city of Charleston, but it is becoming one, and one that frankly is of concern. And this is something that the previous administration and I had very different opinions on. I mean, and I'm, I would say I'm right, but in fairness, his point was it isn't illegal to be homeless. You can't arrest your way out of homelessness. And I respect that position. However, being homeless, I tell people, does not give you a license to do illegal things. So there's a balancing act here that if you're going to be constructive about something like this, you need to figure pragmatic and proactive solutions before it gets out of hand. And in fairness, there are a lot of economic strains going back to the growth that we're having. There is a real affordability issue. Our biggest social and economic issue as a region is affordability. We're having folks that retirees or senior level executives that love coming here, and their board members love moving here. And we're having younger people that are living in apartments that are, moving here. But where we're missing is the middle management. I mean, the mid-career folks, because it's so difficult to, once you're married and start having a family, to find a place that's affordable, that you can live. And so that is putting strain on our macro economy, and something that we need to address very sincerely. And we need to talk about it from a regional standpoint, which I'll get to here in a minute. But a byproduct of that is you do start to see more and more homelessness. And so one of the things that we're looking at doing is establishing what's called a rapid shelter. Columbia did this, and some other cities around the country have done this successfully, where you have a place to bring people that has wraparound services for mental health, addiction. So it's not just picking people up and taking them to jail. It is picking people up and taking them to a place where they can get help. And if there are criminal elements there, that's where you can sort that out, and you can get the people that are trying to get back up on their feet the help that they need. The one nuance that I've brought to this that I think is pretty important, and you'll probably hear about from Mayor Burgess, who I'm going to tell you is one of the coolest cats you're going to meet. I mean, granted, he is coming after me, so I'll give him that. But he is just a great, great person, and he and I, despite, I mean, we both grew up here, but in different backgrounds, but really have locked together in a variety of ways and worked very closely on a lot of issues. And in order to see forward progress, you need that to happen. And this is another example of that. Again, we can't address homelessness in the city of Charleston by itself, because we have 3 counties, we have 27 municipalities in the 3 counties. So if we try and do a program, it's going to, in all likelihood, fail. We're just going to be throwing money at it and making ourselves feel better. So what we're doing here is we're actually, I'm pitching this on October 1st to all the mayors of the Tri-County, and I'm giving them an opportunity to buy into this. So it would be on a pro rata basis along with the 3 counties. So this would be an amenity or an asset or a service that everybody can share in. And that's what you need to have it happen. And the good thing about that too is when, you know, A, it's a very cost-effective way of doing it, but B, when you need resources from DSS or Department of Mental Health from the state, you have the political capital of all the reps from the Tri-County area leaning in to help. So again, strength in numbers, right? It's a smart way to go about it. So this ain't going to solve all the problems, guys, but it's going to make a big dent in it. And I'm really excited about figuring it out. And I'll wrap up with this on it. Again, it isn't going to solve it, but and I've talked to some of the nonprofit community, and we've gotten their buy-in, which is really important. But then you get some folks like, well, you should do it this way, you should do it that way, and we think, you know, instead of 118 units, you should really have 140 units. I was like, look, I tell you what, we're going to try something, and we're going to see how it goes. And then when we have about a year or 2 under our belt, we're going to reassess. And if we need to pivot, we're going to pivot, but we're going to keep moving forward. And we're not going to just let perfection be the enemy of the good. We're going to move forward and address this and not just talk about it. Thank you. All right, public safety. You know, this one was a pretty easy one for me. And I know this kind of goes without saying. And another person I want to give a huge shout out to is Chief Walker, our police chief. He and I basically came in at the same time. Yeah. Great human, wonderful individual, cares about this community very deeply. He and I have spent a lot of time together, including I did a ride along with him like week 1 in office where, anyway, that's a whole nother story that I was like, do I need a bulletproof vest? I mean, what's going on? But anyway, a great guy. And when I started talking about, you know, how to address some of the, you know, issues related to crime in our community, I said, you know, bottom line is, to me, there are plenty of laws on the books. It really comes down to a matter of enforcement. And that is where the police, if they're going to enforce, they need to know that the city has their back. And that was one of the establishments of trust that the chief and I came to very early on. I'm like, look, you know, we want to be respectful of everybody. We're not, you know, looking at sending in SWAT teams, but basic enforcement deters bad behavior. And no other place is there a better example of that than on at King Street. So King Street was an area, or has been an area, that when I was growing up as a kid, I would ride my bicycle up there because there were some houses that, let's just say, had dancing girls in them, and they had some like pictures on the window, and I would ride my bike up there just to check them out. But so it changed a lot over the years, and I hope nobody's recording this, but it did evolve in a pretty major way, and a lot of that was compliments of Joe Riley and some of the progressive things that he did in terms of long-term vision, much like what we're looking to do at Sumar and Union Pier, that he did with Charleston Place, the hotel on King Street, and the revitalization of it. Problem is that it got really popular, and then it, frankly, was a place where all the locals would go. But now it's not really. I mean, you know, I grew up here, and I was like, you know, I'm not dying to go down to King Street on a Friday or Saturday night. It's kind of mayhem. And so this is our town. And I love the fact that we have 8 million visitors, and I welcome those 8 million visitors and their credit cards. But we have to appreciate what they love about this city, and that is we have a living population of people that make it an incredible place. So we need to pay attention to the locals, and we want to make sure that the locals feel comfortable going to their main CVB drag, right? So King Street is something that we took special attention to. And instead of just coming in and saying I had all the answers, I met with the chief, and then we met with all the businesses, and we talked it through. We met with the CVB, the visitors groups, and we came up with a strategy. And then we met every 3 months to see how this was going. And it was basic enforcement. It was DUIs. It was public drunkenness. It was this is a great one. One of the biggest problem areas was a particular bar just off of King Street. And I started digging into it. My staff, I was like, well, you know, what is it? And blah, blah, blah. And we were talking about how many arrests there have been outside of that facility. And then my city attorney's like, oh, by the way, you know, the city owns the building. I was like, what? I said, well, then this is easily solved. And so, yeah, I mean, we put them in default of their lease, took back over the property. And as of council meeting next weekend, we're signing a new lease with a great business that's going to be an incredible asset to the city and really the area. And when we talked to the police about it, they're like, yeah, I mean, it has cut our calls down in half just by having that one business gone. So, you know, these are things that, you know, you can't be afraid to act on them, right? And I'm not going to say I'll make every decision perfectly, but we are going to act, and you will get decisions out of my administration, I can promise you. Another thing that we're doing that, again, this is a little bit boring, but it is pretty important, is, you know, Charleston's growing. So and real estate's not cheap, right? So you got to be ahead of it. You got to understand where the growth is happening. And like Clements Ferry Road, this is a major growth corridor. So we need to be thinking ahead and buying property so that we have places for police stations and fire stations and EMT, so we have coverage. Right now, we are on our back foot trying to find locations to accommodate, particularly, I don't mind telling you, on the Cainhoy Peninsula. So I have kicked that into high gear. We have the funding, and we are aggressively putting together 3 packages to buy property to make sure that you all are going to have coverage, not just now, but really for the next 50 years. Because again, you need to do it now. You got to be thinking that way if you're going to put together, if you're going to keep Charleston, what we all know and love. What's the next one? Can't remember. Storm prep. Oh yeah, this is a good one. You know, the no yahoos, right? They are real nervous when I go on live television. I can tell you that my staff is. Right. And you know, look, I go back to first being prepared for storms is kind of to me, government 101. When we came in, if you can believe it, there was no emergency management procedure when we had known weather events, not necessarily named storms, but we knew there was going to be a king tide, and we knew there was going to be a north wind, and we knew there was going to be, you know, 3 inches of rain. There was no protocol for that. So we've established a protocol for that, and We've started shutting down streets. We're trying to be very proactive about this as we address flooding holistically. And one of the things that we did is, I remember sitting in the MEAC, which was during Debbie, the emergency command post, and I'm watching all this live footage of people driving right through police barricades into flooded streets. And again, this isn't me just being a nervous Nelly. I mean, last year, somebody died in Mount Pleasant driving into flooded waters. A very good childhood friend of mine's mother almost died 4 months ago getting caught on Berry Street after church. It happens. And so this was something that I watched this happen. And then I saw a few of these jacked up trucks that, thanks to Mark Smith and the legislature, we've banned the Carolina squat now, bulldozing through and throwing a wake up and swamping property, which is, to me, just obnoxious. I mean, I have, a teenage son, and if he did that, I mean, I'd take the belt off right now. But so it was infuriating for me to see that happen. And again, it's just it's a sign of respect. We live in a community where I think it's an honor and a privilege to live here, and I mean that. But it's a responsibility, and you're polite to other people. You respect other people. You don't floor your car through a foot of water and swamp their property because you're late to do whatever you're late to do. So that is the context in which the No Yahoos comment came out. And I have been stuck with it ever since. But we are very serious about this. I mean, we do have to live with water. I mean, we're the low country. We're pretty proactive about how we address it, both in work we're doing with the Army Corps of Engineers, work we're doing with the state, work we're doing with the county. This is not going to be an easy solution. It's not as much of an issue out here because, frankly, you all have very modern and well-maintained stormwater. But it's still very relevant, and one that is going to be, again, no silver bullet, but there are some positive steps forward that we've taken and will be taking here in the immediate and long term. All right, now I'm getting to sound governance. So that was the city org chart that we inherited. When I came in, I started looking at, I'm no corporate guru, but I was like, I've run some companies, and I was like, I got 25 direct reports to me, and that ain't gonna work. So this is just something that, in Charleston, we kind of sometimes get stuck in the mud, and we don't like to change the way things have been done for quite some time. And of course, we had a very successful mayor for 40 years. This org chart literally was just been Frankensteined out based on personalities of Riley. And he was a capable administrator, and he had people that he knew and trusted to kind of middle manage down. Well, if you don't have that anymore, and there were very few folks left from the Riley administration when we came in, I said, guys, it's time to modernize. It was a little bit of a challenge because we did inherit a budget coming in, so you could only do it in a way that didn't cost more money. So I had to work within the existing budget, and so we've modernized it where I now have 6 direct reports, and it's a hell of a lot more efficient. There is some learning curve going on. I'll give you one other example, and this is not an exaggeration. Up until Saturday, this past week, the city of Charleston and all 1,900 employees that are under me used paper timesheets that they had to fill out every week. That's how dated it was. So we've, gotten a little bit more modern in terms of efficiencies, but also, folks, it's meant because I believe very sincerely that government's job is customer service first and foremost. We are here to help you, to make your lives better. When you have an issue, it doesn't matter how big or small it is, you should feel comfortable calling and you should get service. And it doesn't happen all the time. I'm well aware of that. There are issues. I can promise you this. The attitude, though, we are pushing to all employees, and there's real excitement and I think a lot of energy now at City Hall and beyond, that people are, getting excited for the job. I mean, a lot of people that go into government do it because they have, usually the money is not that great, right? So you got to instill in them the excitement to serve again. And that I think is coming back. So excited to see that, but give us a little bit of time. We're working on it. What else on efficiency? Oh, this is a good one. So when I came in, we were looking at kind of the balance sheets and the projects, capital improvement projects. So this is the city ops building that's being proposed on the neck area in an industrial area. And it's on a 16-acre site. And they want to do fire training there for the fire department and fleet, where we keep all of our cars and a few other, garbage trucks and things like that. Well, they bought a site and it's 16 acres and it didn't fit all the programming. And so like, okay, well, no problem. We'll build a $25 million parking deck. And I was like, well, why wouldn't you just buy another site? And because it's a lot cheaper than building a parking deck. And then it was kind of like blink, 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 blink. And so we, and they're like, well, it's pretty far along. This is $104 million project. And I was like, look, man, I mean, and by the way, the thing I didn't like about it either, I was like, that looks like a flex space outside of Atlanta's airport. I mean, I'm not going to go to a ribbon cutting of that thing. And so I was like, we got to make it a little bit more attractive. And so when I started digging into the economics of it, it was clear to me, I was like, this can be done a lot better. And so we're now under contract to separate out fleet, put that over in West Ashley off of Bees Ferry. We're actually blocking a 340 unit apartment building that was proposed there. It's in a flooding area that I wasn't really crazy about. So the fire is going to go there. Fleet will stay here, and that rapid shelter that we were talking about earlier will actually go on this 2.5 acres that would be this residual. And the city will end up netting out about $5 or $6 million in savings from all of those machinations. So really excited about that. And again, when I look at, our role in government, I do look at it very seriously as having a fiscal responsibility to the voters and the constituents. I mean, that means a lot to me. This is not other people's money. So that's a little bit of a shift than what you see, particularly in local government. But I can tell you from my previous career, I can work an Excel spreadsheet like nobody's business. And all the ones that are done at council now are mine. And, and it really freaks out the city CFO, but she's great. Anyway, this is an example, again, of what I would consider, and I hope you all do too, is just sound governance on how the city is run. Last thing I'll point to, and no pressure, Mark, we need to collaborate with Columbia. We need to collaborate with City of North Charleston. We need to collaborate with Berkeley and Dorchester and Charleston counties if we're going to get anything accomplished. And I can tell you, for the past 50 years, that's been a real challenge. There have been silos. The North Charleston does its own thing. City of Charleston does its own thing. And we now have two brand new mayors in the two largest cities in our state. And we get along really, really well. And then I was in the legislature, as Mark mentioned. I know how important our legislature is to any success that we're going to have when it comes to infrastructure, affordability, flooding relief, you name it. A lot of the money flows through Columbia. Almost all federal funding flows through Columbia. So if you don't have a great relationship with your delegation, it's a real problem. And these are not Democrat or Republican issues. These are just local issues and money. So we need to make sure that we can work with whomever. And trust me, I have no problem talking to the Democrats on county council or the Republicans if we can get what we need to get. And so this collaboration is something that, frankly, we have some trust to build back. For those of you that aren't overly familiar with the long-standing history of South Carolina, Charleston region and the rest of the state don't exactly always love one another. I always equated it to three siblings. I think this is a perfect analogy. Charleston is one, the oldest sister, right? The Midlands is the second, and then you got the Uplands, right? Upstate. Well, of course, we're the oldest, we're the wealthiest, and we're the best looking, right? Problem is when we get together with our sisters at Thanksgiving dinner, I mean, we could complain about getting our leg amputated, and they'd be like, whatever, you're fine. And so point is that during my time in the legislature, and I was there 3 terms, there was almost no interaction with Charleston and Columbia. And so what we did kind of at whatever month 2, we rented some buses, we got council members, we brought some county council folks, and I got the CVB, Helen, we got great food and booze down here. So we brought all that up to Columbia, and we wined and dined them. And I was like, guys, I'm not asking for your anything right now, but I'm just letting you know, we do appreciate what you do. And we're looking to repair that relationship because again, folks, it's just, we need to be pragmatic about these things and we need their help. And again, you have an incredible representative in Mark Smith and other members of the Berkeley County delegation, great leaders, good people that are in leadership positions. And I think it's going to pay off for us in a pretty significant way. So they did this too. They gave a bunch of whatever headlines from the paper if it spurs any questions that you all might have. But now's the time for me to shut up and to open it up to you. And looking forward to hearing any questions that you all might have. And again, please don't be shy because it helps me. How much time we have? Okay. All right. Who's got a question? Yes, ma'am. Yep. You got to talk to Mark Smith because those are state roads. Boom. Huh? Oh, sorry. Okay. The question was, when I drive downtown, the roads are terrible. What are you going to do about that? And my simple response is you got to talk to Mark Smith because he is, in all seriousness, I mean, a lot of the roads in the city are owned by the state. King Street, for example, is owned by the state. That is one that I want the city to take over. And I've already told the new Secretary of Transportation that. But here's the deal. They are problematic. And you hearing from me, what nobody wants to hear in politics, especially local politics, is, this. That ain't my problem. That's the county's. And that's not the county's problem. That's the state's or whatever, right? You don't care. You just don't. And you shouldn't have to, right? I'm your local representative. Your councilmen are your local representatives. We all get along really well. And what you won't see coming out of my administration, and I don't think we're going to see it from the Berkeley County representatives that you all have in the county, and then also from the delegation, any of that. We're going to work with one another to actually get things taken care of. Now, I'll say this. When it comes to repaving of roads, we have I think it's a 99-year backlog, literally, that many roads in our city, our state. And so what you also have to think about is, the most of the road improvement dollars, particularly paving, is paid for by a gas tax. And here's the deal. The gas tax is going down every year because people are using more hybrid cars. So it's just not as much money coming in. It's a real issue. It's something that we're going to need to address. There's also talk about, not downtown, mind you, but abandoning of certain roads across other parts of the state. The one thing that really bothers me, though, and I'm off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it is relevant. District 6, which is what all 3 counties in our area are part of, DOT district, state DOT district, is the lowest funded district in the state. And that has to change. And that is because of an equation that they use for number of miles and quality of asphalt that gets into a boring thing. But our quality of asphalt is better than most because we actually pave our own roads. Our counties do because we have to. So if we just left them, they would actually rate higher on the state and we'd get more money. So it's a little bit of a backward way of looking at things, and one that we're going to be working with DOT to address. What else we got? Yes, sir.
For those that have questions in the room, we've got a mic and we'll just bring it over to you. And
So you were just talking about the repaving, but there's small little projects. On this island, there's several main streets with some potholes.
Right.
And we can't get those potholes repaired.
Right.
Call the city. I've spoken to our city councilman, the previous city councilman. They always say that it's going to get repaired. It's not like a major road repair. It's a pothole.
Right.
And they're on two main roads here.
Right.
And somehow they need to get repaired. I mean,
no, you're right. Again, those in all likelihood are county roads, but you're calling the city, but we should be able, we have a traffic and transportation department that's shoveling some asphalt and out of the back of a truck and can fix them. It's not a permanent fix, but it's so that you don't break your axle. And that's something, if you tell me where they are, or Mark Smith, either one of us, because we will figure this out and triangulate, that's the kind of stuff I want to hear. And I mean that very sincerely. Yes, sir.
Let's talk taxes. So we know Ben Navarro is doing a lot of things. We see the container trucks. We know what we pay in tax. We talked about the port. We pay a lot of taxes. Talk to us about where our taxes are going and how things are going to change to make sure that the tax base is going to be correct.
Whoop. So just, I mean, of course, they're two different taxes, right? I mean, you got your income tax, which largely goes to the state, and that is helping to, and then some sales tax, and of course that gas tax that I was referring to. But then your property tax and is what funds the county and the school district, and then the city gets about 25% of your property taxes. So just for clarity, in terms of the city on roads, we can do small repairs like filling some potholes and fixing sidewalks. But the major funding source for infrastructure related to 526 or Cainhoy Road are either county or state. And they're very different funding mechanisms for each. So you do pay a lot in taxes, right? And what I see it as government's job and responsibility to do is to make sure that we're proactive and thoughtful about where those taxes go. Like, so take Cainhoy Road, for example. There's, a widening going on, Clements Ferry Road. There's a widening going on now with Berkeley County, but, the concern is that it's not enough. And there's a lot of activity, a lot of exciting activity. I mean, there's an incredible development that is being, it's underway on the upper Cainhoy Peninsula, but we need as a government to make sure that the infrastructure is there to accommodate it. Because if you look at Johns Island, that hasn't happened, and it is a disaster out there. I mean, the traffic is horrible, and we're playing catch up. And so back to your tax dollars, it's an incredible waste of tax dollar money because we're now paying interest on interest and appreciation where we could have addressed the issue years ago. These are using the taxes that are existing. Well, you're not going to hear me call for an increase in taxes. And again, yeah, exactly. Charleston County, right? Charleston County. Right. So if you're talking about Union Pier, which is interesting about Union Pier, it's not taxed right now. There's no tax revenue coming in off of it because it's owned by the state. So any future increase through private development that would go in there, any increase in the base year would be reinvested in infrastructure specific to that site for a period of 20 years. It's what's called a tax increment financing district. So that to me is a very responsible way of getting something off the ground that doesn't increase your taxes And the tax revenue, the tax revenue wouldn't be there but for private investment. So it's zero right now. If the private investment doesn't come in, it's going to stay a port property, and there'll be zero for the foreseeable future and behind razor wire. So this is, to me, again, a little bit complicated, but a bit of a win-win when you look at it financially. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Mayor, thanks for being here. Can you address the prepares to live with water, where we are with the flooding in the Charleston downtown?
Sure. Where to begin on that one? There have been a lot of studies going on about sea level rise, about the increase in major storm activities and rainfall that we've had. A lot of that's been being tracked over really the past decade. And, you know, we do have issues. There's no question about it, right? It's higher king tides. And so when I came into office, the water plan was being contemplated or being kind of wrapped up, which was an integral plan to discuss water for not just Charleston, but included Daniel Island, James Island, Johns Island, West Ashley. Well, I got a sneak peek at it, and I said, guys, this is, and it really international experts, some Dutch folks, some you know, people from New Orleans, and so they know flooding, right? And I said, well, you were recommending 42 new studies or analysis be done. I'm just going to tell you, I got to have some very actionable items right now. I don't mind looking long-term and preparing for that, but you got to tell me how I can tell some folks in West Ashley that constantly have water in their backyard because of clogged drains, how we're going to address that. And so what we've done is we've actually, in a partnership with them, it took them 3 months longer, and to their credit, they didn't increase my scope and I don't have to pay them anymore. But I said, we broke everything down by basins, by drainage basins, so that people can start to understand when water goes into your, and here again on Daniel Island, it's a little bit more simple. I mean, you can see the infrastructure that you have, whereas when you have stuff that's 75 years old in West Ashley, they have no idea where that drainage ditch in their backyard goes. So you got to educate people on that. You got to look at where deferred maintenance is. And we have so much deferred maintenance in the city, it's really not deferred maintenance anymore. It's a capital project. And so we are aggressively addressing some of these smaller items, and then all the way up to figuring out exactly how we're going to fund the larger items. And that is everything from, again, cleaning out a culvert and a ditch that we have an easement on, to looking at extending the battery, which again, this was a major issue during the campaign. There was the idea of building a wall with the Army Corps of Engineers around the peninsula. And I was like, yeah, that's a hard no for me. And it's not that I don't believe we need protection, right? But I said, if you're going to spend local money of $300+ million, because it was an over $1 billion project, I was like, I have no votes on city council, and you're not getting mine for the $300 million to build a levee around. Now, if you can marry form and function, that makes sense to me. If this can be an amenity and protect the city, that makes sense to me. And guess what, guys? We did that in 1840. It's called the Battery. And why don't we just take that exact same design and modernize it, of course, and extend it? And, you know, the Corps pushed back on that pretty hard, and I rejected their proposal, which was controversial. I mean, I caught some heat for it, but I knew it wasn't the right move, because I knew it wasn't something that the residents, you know, even if you don't live downtown, it wouldn't be something that, you know, you would want to see or be proud of, right? Or live with. And so, long story short, we have now, they've agreed to allow us to design the battery extension going from where it currently ends on the Coast Guard base up to the Joe Stadium on the west side, and on the east side going all the way up to Newmarket Creek. And actually doing some pretty creative things to help with stormwater retention. That the battery would be for surge and hurricanes and tides, but the rainwater that comes onto the streets and has to flush out of the city, we're doing some innovative way with help from the Dutch to use salt marsh as retention. So it's a pretty innovative approach. It's somewhat in schematic phase now, but we've taken over from the Corps and they've agreed to let us do it. So a lot going on with stormwater, I can tell you that.
First of all, let me say that we're thrilled to have you as mayor on what you're doing for the city already. And I am concerned about the truck traffic. From where I-26 feeds into 526 past Long Point Road, the trucks are taking up all the lanes. They're up on your bumpers. They're trying to get one truck in front of the other and then tying up traffic, trying to cut over at the last minute at Long Point Road.
Right.
And we are natives, and my friends from James Island, Johns Island, don't even want to come to Daniel Island because they fear they're going to be killed with the trucks. You never see a police presence between I-26 and Long Point Road to correct any of this truck traffic or pull them over. Or is there anything that we can do about these trucks that are just hogging the roads and tying up traffic?
Yes, I think go back to enforcement. It is a little complicated, as you're well aware, because you're going from Charleston County to Berkeley County, then back over to Charleston County. And then you've got Mount Pleasant, city of Charleston, and then you've got North Charleston. So it's a little bit of a jurisdictional issue in terms of who would be there to enforce. But this is something with Dwayne Lewis. I think we can definitely, Berkeley County Sheriff, who is a phenomenal sheriff. I think he could help be all over. The other thing I would say too on that front is that, and I know you don't want to hear, oh, when this happens, but the intermodal facility and the Leatherman terminal, now that the labor dispute has been worked out, thank God, that intermodal facility is going to take a lot of containers off of the roads. And then also with the port, and I really have a great working relationship with them. Barbara Melvin, the CEO, is a very dynamic and strong leader, despite being about, this tall, maybe 100 pounds, with her huge platform shoes. But she's, I think, very forward thinking, understands that she needs to be a good neighbor, and means that, I think, very sincerely. And so their whole purchase of the Capstone facility, I think, is an effort to help alleviate some of the flow coming from the Long Point Road facility, the Wando Welch, and putting brake bulk. So they're thinking strategically about long-term and traffic, and then how intermodally they can get move freight faster and safer and not on our roads. So I think we've kind of hit the peak annoyance part of that, and it should be getting better in the upcoming months when that thing opens. All right. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming out. I'm curious how you and the other mayors of our region are working together to increase attainable housing for our teachers, firefighters, and those type of folks.
No, it's a great question. As I mentioned earlier, with like workforce, with homeless shelter, this is something when it comes to how to address affordable housing. Really, the city of Charleston can't do it by itself. City of North Charleston, we need to work together on that. We need to have a collective approach. One of the things that I'm really pushing is we have our affordable housing initiative. North Charleston has its. North Charleston has a housing authority. We have a housing authority. The county has a housing authority. Charleston County does. It's horribly inefficient because we're always competing for the same funding. And these are houses that really, it doesn't matter jurisdictionally where they are. The region is what needs it. So this is something that we're working pretty closely with. And I was awarded a Harvard Bloomberg Fellowship. So I went to school in Cambridge, is what I like to tell people now. But part of that initiative is Bloomberg, and I got to give him credit for this. His foundation is funding for us a study to do a regional analysis. And again, I hate studies, but this is one that has very actionable items about how to do a regional housing authority that could be, I think, very impactful on addressing it, because I mentioned earlier, I truly believe that this is something that is a major economic development issue for our region, and one that we need to look at, not just from a social standpoint, but from an economic standpoint. And Reggie, Mayor Burgess and I see it the same way. Mount Pleasant's a little bit of a different animal. There's a real aversion to having any sort of affordable housing because it's just viewed as, Section 8 or project housing, which is not the case at all. I mean, the starting salary for a school teacher in this region is below 80% the average median income. And when I sign letters to employees for the city of Charleston, congratulating them for 5 years or 10 years, I do it once a quarter. And this is no exaggeration, usually about 100 of them that I sign, and maybe 8 of them, less than 10%, live in the city of Charleston. That's a huge problem. And that goes back to clogging up our roads. That contributes to the traffic because they're coming in from Monk's Corner, from wherever, the further out they have to go because they can't afford to live here. So again, it's an infrastructure issue, it's a social issue, it's an economic issue, and one that we're gonna be pretty aggressive and creative about trying to address. And of course, we're gonna need the state's help to allow that to happen. Well, look, folks, this has been an honor for me. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate your attention. And I look forward to coming back, man. This is always a good time. So thank you for having me.
Mayor Cogswell, thanks for your enlightening presentation. We're proud citizens of the city of Charleston. And again, we just appreciate your remarks, and we thank you for your leadership. As a token of our appreciation, we have some selected items. Yep.
Oh, look at that. Awesome. Awesome.